So Dana White and Hunter Campbell are absolutely cooking. They just announced a massive amount of fights, including Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. We've also got news of Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Thompson, Jared Cannonier versus Roman Dolidze, Rob Font versus Davison Figueiredo, and many others that I'm going to get to at the end of this video. But we're going to start with the big ones, including the most recently announced Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. I told you they were going to do this. People are going to say this fight makes no sense, but judging off of Paddy Pimblett's last performance to the UFC, this fight makes absolute sense. Okay, they're doing Tony Ferguson, Paddy Pimblett, allegedly on the December pay-per-view card at the end of the year. This is going to be an amazing card at the end of the year. I'm really looking forward to it. And I think Paddy Pimblett's going to win. But it's kind of sad that I'm not sure if he is. You know what I mean? I think a lot of Tony Ferguson fans are going to be thinking to themselves, you know what? He's got a solid chance of winning this one, you know. A lot of Tony Ferguson fans are going to be looking at that last fight with Jared Gordon and thinking, actually, this isn't bad for Tony Ferguson. It's a massive fight on the main card of a pay-per-view. It's a big selling fight. He's going to get a ton of credit if he wins it. He's going to get a ton of hype if he wins it as well. And I'm going to have to say one thing. Paddy Pimblett broke his foot in the first round of that fight against Jared Gordon. I know that the decision of that fight is going to make people absolutely overlook that fact, but he did break his foot in the first round of that fight against Jared Gordon. And in my opinion, the fact that Jared Gordon even took it to a competitive decision is embarrassing for him. Pimblett was on one leg and he's been out ever since that fight, healing from that injury. I know people are going to say you're shilling for Pimblett. You're just trying to cope for Paddy Pimblett. Listen, I've trashed Paddy Pimblett, but we have to be honest here. If he doesn't break his foot in the first round, he's going to have a pretty different performance against Jared Gordon in that matchup. But still, Tony Ferguson, Paddy Pimblett, I think we're going to see a better version of Paddy Pimblett here. I think we're going to see the same Tony Ferguson. He just took a whole bunch of damage against Bobby Green and got finished in that fight as well. Got choked out with an arm triangle at the end of that fight after taking a bunch of shots before that. Now, Tony Ferguson does have that chance because he is heavy-handed and we've seen him put Chandler off balance with a knockdown. We saw him do the same thing to Bobby Green where they're not really concussive knockdowns, but it's still the fact that he has that heat in his hands to put these guys on their back in these fights. So, is there a solid chance that Tony Ferguson's going to find a way to clip Paddy Pimblett and hurt him in this fight? Yes. But at the end of the day, if Bobby Green is getting you down and submitting you at this point in your career, I can so see Paddy Pimblett taking him down. Tony Ferguson, just look at his body in the post about this fight. It's on Big Marcel on Instagram, the guy that makes all of the fight announcements. Shout out to him. Look at his body. I know this was him at 170, but it wasn't like a well thought out move to 170. It was almost a really quick turnaround after he lost to Michael Chandler that he was planning on moving up to 170 to fight Li Jingliang. Eventually had to take on, eventually moved to take on Nate Diaz instead, which was a better matchup for him. But come on, man. The matchups that we've seen, or the performances that we've seen from Tony Ferguson in his last two matchups just aren't good whatsoever. And it worries me here against Paddy Pimblett. So I think this is a really smart matchup from the UFC. And I will be picking Paddy Pimblett to maybe get a bit tricky on the feet early on. Okay, because that chin is up in the air and he will admit that himself. So Tony Ferguson does have that chance of catching him. But I do see Pimblett just out-muscling him in the takedowns because, as we've seen over and over again in Ferguson's recent performances, he just doesn't seem to have that strength anymore to shake off a takedown or to stuff a takedown, get the underhook and pummel. He doesn't have that strength in his body anymore, and he's only getting older, and he just took a whole bunch more damage against Bobby Green. This is a great fight to get Paddy Pimblett back on track, and then they're going to try and move him into the top 15. As soon as I saw Matt Frevola versus Benoit Saint-Denis get announced, which we'll talk about at the end of this video as well, I knew, oh, they're going to go with Tony Ferguson is a very viable option here. I thought they were going to go with Matt Frevola. Maybe they were going to go with, who knows, a Renato Moicano or a Dan Hooker as well. Maybe now they're going to do Dan Hooker versus Renato Moicano. But as soon as I saw Matt Frivola in November and no Paddy Pimblett, I was like, okay, Pimblett's not fighting in November. Looks like he's fighting in December instead. and he's got the matchup against Tony Ferguson. It's a good matchup for him compared to some of the other guys that are in the top 15 of lightweight. You know, I don't think I'd like his chances coming back after a really bad foot break in that fight against Gordon, straight into the top 15 against a very good lightweight contender. So this is a good fight for him to get back in there, get a win, and then start looking towards the top 15 when he has a bit more momentum. And I am going to say it again. He did break his foot in the first round against Jared Gordon. I know other fights he's been cracked and he's been wobbled off balance and he's been caught with a shot and knocked down here and there-ish. He's never really been knocked down in a way where he's like woken up on the canvas, but he's been cracked and not known where he is, and in some cases stumbled to the canvas. But I am going to have to go with Paddy Pimblett. I think he's going to be too strong. And at the end of the day, something you can't deny is that Paddy Pimblett is a massive lightweight, strong dude, good genetic frame. I think he'll outmuscle Tony Ferguson, take him down and choke him out. We move on to another fight, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Thompson. A weird matchup. I thought there were many other options for Shavkat Rakhmonov. I don't know what to do with my hands. It's weird standing up on camera. I thought there were many other options for Shavkat Rakhmonov. I thought there were a bunch they could have gone with. They could have tried to go Ian Gary, Kamaru Usman, but then I realized these guys are all training at the same gym and they're all best of friends, so they're not going to take on each other, which is the absolute saddest reason ever as to why they wouldn't be making matchups. Killcliff is the biggest problem in the welterweight division right now. So they've gone with Stephen Thompson, which I don't mind. He is going to destroy Stephen Thompson. He can take him down. I even think he can win this in the clinch with knees. Shavkat Rakhmonov's clinch game is some of the best in the welterweight division. Leon Edwards has a really good clinch. But in terms of landing effective knees to the body, Shavkat has a really good ability to get over-under in the clinch and use his frame and size to land really vicious knees in the clinch. He was doing it against Jeff Neal when he couldn't take him down. He's done it against other opponents as well. And I think Wonderboy is going to be no different. I think he's going to push forward, maybe take a couple of shots off Wonderboy. It's not like Wonderboy's got the type of power in that first round to knock down Shavkat or to knock him out in the first round with his punches. And I think if Shavkat moves forward a bunch, he's going to take away some of those kicking abilities from Stephen Thompson, just like we saw with Sean Strickland versus Israel Adesanya. So I reckon he's going to walk him down, get in the over-under position, push Wonderboy up against a cage, knee him to the body a bunch, and then potentially get the inside or outside trip down to the canvas, half guard on top position. I reckon this is going to be a quick finish for Shavkat Rakhmonov. I do understand why Wonderboy has taken this fight. No, it's taken place in 296 December. Again, this December card's going to be absolutely amazing, by the way. On that December main card. So they've got time to prepare for this. But I know why Wonderboy has taken it, because if you're going to take a chance against anyone at welterweight, why not let it be a guy where if you win, at least you're going to be in some kind of title elimination conversation? Because if Wonderboy wins this one, they were already talking about him versus Usman. I don't know if Bilal's going to get a title shot. Maybe he has to go through Usman first. But the winner of this is going to be next for Usman. Or if Bilal versus Usman happen and Usman wins, then they're still going to be next for Usman. So I could see Wonderboy looking at this fight as, you know what? Any one of these guys could beat me right now at welterweight. Any one of them could shoot a takedown. There's dangerous grapplers coming up as well. And he's not in the UFC's good books at the moment. So I'd rather take on the challenge that's going to get me towards a title elimination bout rather than take on the challenge that's going to get me towards the same position in the rankings. So he's going to take the risk that gives him at least some kind of reward, but I don't think it's going to give him a reward. I think this is going to give him a tough beatdown from Shavkat Rakhmonov. Stephen Thompson's going to get beaten up in the clinch, really badly beaten up in the clinch with knees to the body. And again, Shavkat loves the clinch. He's taller than Wonderboy. He's going to be stronger than Wonderboy in the clinch. Even though Wonderboy is great at striking, we do see him against the cage quite often in his fights. But all of his previous opponents that he's had that have backed him up into the cage, Kevin Holland, Vicente Luque even was able to do it as well. Jeff Neal had moments, but then just Wonderboy scooted his way out of there. They've had these moments where they've had Wonderboy up against a cage, but none of them have the ability or the brains and IQ, because they're dumb, to shoot in for the clinch, go for some kind of takedown. That's what Shavkat's going to do. There is an ability, there is a way to push Wonderboy up against a cage, and if others can do it, I think Shavkat with his giant frame at welterweight is going to be able to do it, and his forward pressure. I reckon he's going to go out there, trip Wonderboy and beat him up on the ground to a first round TKO. Sad way for Wonderboy to go out. I do think this is going to be his last fight, but we'll see what happens. You never know. We move on to another fight. Jared Cannonier versus Roman Dolidze. To be announced December 2nd. Who knows where it's going to be. Allegedly not a main event, so that means the card's going to be really good. But Jared Cannonier versus Roman Dolidze, a sick matchup. I'm going to go Jared Cannonier. People are saying this makes no sense for Jared Cannonier to take. Why would Cannonier take this fight? And I agree. This fight doesn't get Jared Cannonier any closer to a title shot. There are fights out there, like the Whittaker rematch potentially, where Cannonier could get one of those fights and be next in line for a title shot if he wins and sit out, be another short notice backup opponent. Of course, there's going to be a bit of a logjam, seeing as Strickland just beat Adesanya. They're probably going to do Strickland versus Duplessis. Then they're probably just going to give Adesanya a title shot because the sport is absolutely pathetic. I can see them doing Whittaker versus the winner of Costa versus Chimaev now. That's a matchup that would be quite interesting. But Cannonier versus Dolidze is a win for Cannonier, in my opinion. Roman Dolidze, I've been watching his fights for a long time. Watched every single one of his fights. Of course, I've watched all of their fights. But the dude can't strike, and he can't take opponents down. You will not see Roman Dolidze take down a top-level opponent at all, and his striking is abysmal. He was getting schooled by Jack Hermansson, but because Jack Hermansson, of course, is an MMA fighter, he's got negative IQ, so he shot takedowns on Roman Dolidze, even though he was schooling him on the feet, because he's a genius. Don't know why he did that in that fight. As soon as he hit the ground, it was over. So, if they do end up on the ground, I do see Roman Dolidze winning this fight by submission, but Cannonier's got good takedown defense. He's quite flexible as well, so if Dolidze tries to attack a single leg and topple him over, we saw against Brunson, even though Brunson did get him down for a moment and drop him in that fight, which is crazy, I don't think he has to worry about the pressure of Dolidze or the takedowns of Dolidze as much. I reckon he's going to chin Dolidze early in this fight. That's my honest prediction. I think Dolidze's not good enough on the feet, not technical at all, swings crazy with overhands over and over again. Eventually, Cannonier's going to make that read. He looked amazing against Vettori. I do think he's still improving. I think he beats up Dolidze and some point finishes him by TKO. I don't think Dolidze's got the chin that Marvin Vettori does. We move on to another fight that got announced, which is Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo. This is like Christmas for MMA fans right now. I'm all hunched over. I feel weird standing up. Either way, Rob Font is going to piece up Deiveson Figueiredo. Now, I know we just saw Rob Font show no ability to stuff takedowns against Corey Sandhagen. Embarrassing performance. He'll agree with me here. Embarrassing performance by Rob Font against Deiveson Figueiredo. However, I've seen him stuff takedowns over and over again against Ricky Simone. I've seen him stuff takedowns in other matchups. Aldo had to hurt him to get him down to the canvas. People have tried to take down Rob Font, and until that Sandhagen fight, where he did get absolutely embarrassed, there hasn't been this sign of, terrible takedown defense for Rob Font, really, in his career. So I think he's going to be able to keep up with the takedowns, potentially of Figueiredo, who's going to be a smaller guy out there, because Rob Font is a massive bantamweight with long arms, long reach, very tall dude for the division as well. And the way I see this is, Figueiredo's kicks aren't the best. He does throw some calf kicks that are pretty good. He's getting older and older. He's going to have been out for some time. Rob Font just fought earlier this year against Corey Sandhagen. Wasn't the best of performances, but he didn't take any damage, so he's ready to get right back in there. I think his boxing is just on another level to Deiveson Figueiredo. If Figueiredo wins and gets a KO, good for him. It'll be an amazing move up from flyweight, and he'll reignite his career and get a bit more momentum going. But I think Rob Font, if he can do what he did to Adrian Yanez on the feet with the boxing, I think he can do it to Deiveson Figueiredo as well, who makes a lot, and this was very, very obvious in his Moreno fights, where he got dropped by a jab in the rematch. He makes a lot of bad boxing mistakes where he relies on head movement, but that don't often work, and it's a very risky strategy to have in those lower weight classes. Of course, risky at heavyweight and light heavyweight as well because of the power, but the guys at those lower weight classes are so fast. Rob Font, especially with his hands, and he's got power in his shots, and he's got a nasty jab. I reckon he can replicate what Moreno did with a bit more finishing ability. I can see him TKOing Davison Figueiredo here and turning that Corey Sandhagen loss right around. We've got a few other fights that got announced as well. Khalil Roundtree versus Azamat Murzakanov. Pretty big matchup in the light heavyweight division. I'm going to go Azamat Murzakanov over Khalil Roundtree. I think Khalil Roundtree, I suspect a bad chin of him. I know he's been TKO'd before, but I can see Azamat Murzakanov, even if he's getting minorly outstruck by Khalil, I can just see him having that one-punch power to switch things around and crack Khalil on the chin. Before he broke his arm against Dustin Jacoby, he was pretty much landing big shots when he wanted to against Jacoby. Now, he was getting out-volumed here and there, but so was Khalil Roundtree. The difference is, Khalil didn't have that power to sit Jacoby down in their fight, and he should have lost that fight to Jacoby. Let's just be honest here. I think Azamat's more dangerous, way more power, way more finishing potential. Maybe Khalil rises to the occasion, but I reckon he's going to get hit with a big shot here. And I can see Azamat finishing him by TKO. We've got another fight that got announced, which is Matt Frivola versus Benoit Saint-Denis. Sick fight. Amazing fight. November 11th, UFC 295, New York, Madison Square Garden. Amazing matchup. Benoit Saint-Denis. This ain't going the distance, by the way. No way is this going the distance. The problem I have with this matchup is Benoit Saint-Denis is very good. He's a solid fighter. Really good. Picked him to beat Thiago Moises for that reason. He's very good. He can grapple offensively. Matt Frivola's a really good wrestler. Now, Moises, he's got the jiu-jitsu, but he's never really had that wrestling base. And never really had that wrestling ability. Matt Frivola does know how to wrestle. Trains at Serra Longo, or whatever it is, Longo Weidman MMA now. I guess they don't care about Serra anymore. But he's got that ability to wrestle. Really good wrestling. We've seen him use it earlier in his career to out-wrestle the likes of a Jalen Turner, who held up a pretty good fight despite not training for wrestling against Mateus Gamrot. I know it was a bit later in his career, but still, we've seen good wrestling from Matt Frivola. I know I'm going to end up in an Instagram video on Benoit Saint-Denis' Instagram page if I do not pick him here, but I'm just going to say this. Matt Frivola hits different. Enough to shatter the chin of Drew Dober. He's got wicked power in his hands. He's got a ton of momentum right now as well. Maybe Benoit could out-wrestle him like an Armand Sarukian did. Maybe that's an option. But Benoit loves to get scrappy on the feet, loves to trade hooks in the pocket, and I noticed against Thiago Moises, he weren't really going for takedowns until the late second round, and in the second round, you know. In the first round, he was trying to break Moises on the feet and land big shots. I can see him trying to play that striking game with Matt Frivola, trying to strike with him, backing him up, landing a couple shots, getting overexcited. And I saw this against Moises. When he had him up against the cage, although he was landing good shots, he was wide open for counters. Wide open for counters. And that's why I'm going to have to go with Matt Frivola. Maybe taking a couple of shots on the feet, backing up against the cage. Benoit goes in for a big flurry, swinging his hooks back and forth to the body and head. And boom, Frivola catches him with a massive shot. The same one that put out Ottoman Azaitar. The same one that put out Drew Dober as well. He's got a really nasty spring counter hook that he lands on these guys as they come in and try and pressure him against the cage. And I can see it happening to Benoit Saint-Denis. But maybe Saint-Denis just chads his way through it. Who knows? I've got a feeling that Frivola's going to catch him in the pocket, though. That's my honest opinion. Other than that, Matthews versus Michael Morales. I'll go Michael Morales on finishing potential here over Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews is too hit and miss. I know Morales didn't have the best of performances against Max Griffin, but he's a young fighter. I think he's going to improve more out of the two of them between fights. I reckon he's got the ability to try and catch Matthews in one of these exchanges, the same way Semmelsberger was able to do 3 times over. So I'm going to go with Michael Morales. Amazing fights announced. Looking forward to all of them. Montana De La Rosa versus JJ Aldridge. Who gives a fuck? Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later, and goodbye.